The thing about working overnight at a gas station is that you start to recognize patterns. The same truckers stopping at the same times, the same insomniacs buying energy drinks at 3 a.m., the same cop who comes in for coffee at 4:30 every morning without fail. So when someone breaks the pattern, you notice. I'd been working the night shift at this Sunoco station in rural Ohio for about 10 months. The job wasn't glamorous, but it paid my rent while I figured out what I actually wanted to do with my life. I was 23 and still living in the same town I grew up in, watching all my friends move away to bigger cities while I stayed behind. The shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and I worked it alone. Company policies said there should be 2 people overnight for safety, but my manager didn't care about policy. He cared about saving money. So most nights it was just me, the hum of the refrigerators, and whatever traffic happened to roll through. This all started about 3 weeks ago with a guy I'd never seen before. He pulled up around midnight in this old Honda Civic that looked like it had seen better days. He came inside and bought a pack of Marlboro Reds and a Gatorade. Normal enough. But when I rang him up, he just stood there staring at me. Not in an aggressive way, more like he was studying me, taking in details. After a few seconds, he paid and left without saying a word. I watched him on the security monitor as he got in his car and drove off. I figured he was just tired or high or something. People get weird late at night. But then he came back the next night, same time, around midnight. Same items, Marlboro Reds and a Gatorade. Same silent stare while I rang him up. This happened 5 nights in a row. By the 5th night, I was starting to feel uncomfortable. I mentioned it to my manager when he came in for the shift change, but he just shrugged and said as long as the guy wasn't causing trouble, it wasn't worth worrying about. On the 6th night, the guy came in at midnight like clockwork, but this time he didn't buy anything. He just walked around the store, looking at the shelves, picking up items and putting them back down. He did this for maybe 10 minutes while I watched him on the monitor from behind the counter. Eventually, he walked up to the register. He didn't have anything to buy, he just stood there, looking at me with that same intense stare. I asked if I could help him with something. He didn't respond right away. Then he said, "What time do you get off?" My stomach dropped. I lied and said 2 a.m., even though my shift didn't end until 6. He nodded slowly, like he was filing that information away. Then he left. I immediately texted my manager and told him what happened. He responded an hour later saying if I felt unsafe, I could call the cops. That was it. No offer to come in, no suggestion to have someone else work with me, just call the cops if you need to. The next night, I was dreading going to work. I thought about calling in sick, but I needed the money and I didn't want to seem paranoid. So I showed up, clocked in, and prepared myself for midnight. Midnight came and went. The guy didn't show up. Neither did 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. By 3 a.m., I'd started to relax. Maybe he'd gotten bored of whatever weird game he was playing. Around 3:30, I went to the bathroom in the back of the store. It's a single-stall employee bathroom, nothing fancy. I was in there for maybe 2 minutes when I came out and saw him. He was standing in the hallway between the bathroom and the main store area, just standing there in the fluorescent light, blocking my path back to the counter. I have no idea how he got in. I hadn't heard the door chime. I hadn't seen him on the cameras. He was just there. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I asked him what he was doing back here. Employees only. He didn't say anything. He just reached into his jacket pocket. I thought he was going for a weapon, and I was about to run, but instead he pulled out a piece of paper. He held it out to me. I didn't want to get close to him, but I also didn't know what else to do. I took a step forward and grabbed the paper from his hand. Then I immediately stepped back. It was a printed photograph of me, taken through the gas station window from outside. I was behind the counter, looking down at my phone. The angle made it clear someone had been standing in the parking lot, watching me. I looked up at him, my hands shaking. I asked him what the hell this was. He smiled. It was the first time I'd seen him smile, and it was worse than the staring. He said, I have more." Then he turned and walked back toward the main store area. I followed him, keeping my distance, and watched him as he walked out the front door and got into his car. He didn't speed off, he just drove away slowly, like he had all the time in the world. I locked the front door immediately. I didn't care that we were supposed to stay open 24/7. I called 911 and told them everything. The operator said they were sending someone, but it would take about 20 minutes because the nearest officer was dealing with a traffic stop on the highway. While I waited, I checked the security footage. I rewound to the time I'd gone to the bathroom. On the cameras, the store looked empty, but there was a brief moment, maybe 3 seconds, where the feed glitched. Just static. When it came back, everything looked normal, except he'd been in the store that whole time. The cameras just hadn't caught him entering. The police arrived, and I showed them the photograph. They took it as evidence and said they'd patrol the area more frequently. They asked if I wanted to file a restraining order, but I'd need the guy's name and information for that. I didn't have any of it. The officer suggested I ask my manager to install better cameras and make sure I wasn't working alone. I laughed at that. My manager wasn't going to do either of those things. The guy didn't come back that night, or the next night. It's been 2 weeks now, and I haven't seen him since, but I can't shake the feeling that he's still out there, watching, waiting. My manager finally agreed to let someone else work the shift with me, only because I threatened to quit. Now there's 2 of us overnight, which helps, but I still check the parking lot obsessively. I still watch the cameras constantly, waiting for the feed to glitch again. And every time someone walks through that door at midnight, my heart stops for a second, wondering if it's him coming back, because he said he had more photos, and I don't know what he's planning to do with them. There's this thing that happens when you work alone at night. You start talking to yourself, not out loud exactly, but in your head. You narrate what you're doing just to fill the silence. Okay, time to restock the candy aisle. Now I'm gonna mop the bathroom. Now I'm gonna count the register. It helps keep you sane when you're the only person in a building for 8 hours straight. I worked at a BP station on the outskirts of a small town in West Virginia, the kind of place where the population is maybe 3,000 people and everyone knows everyone's business. I'd taken the job because I needed something to pay the bills while I saved up to move somewhere, anywhere that wasn't here. The station was old, built sometime in the 90s, and it showed. The paint was peeling, the tile floors were cracked, and the coolers made this rattling sound that never stopped. But it was open 24 hours, and that meant someone had to work the overnight shift. That someone was me. My shift was 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., and for the most part, it was uneventful. A few regulars would stop by, some truckers passing through, maybe a couple of teenagers looking for a place to hang out because there was literally nothing else to do in this town. We got deliveries twice a week, usually during the day, but occasionally, if the driver was running behind, they'd show up late, like middle of the night late. This happened about a month ago. It was a Wednesday, sometime around 2 a.m. when I heard a truck pull up outside. I looked at the security monitor and saw a delivery truck backing up to the side entrance where we received shipments. I wasn't expecting a delivery. Nobody had mentioned anything to me about one coming, so it wasn't unheard of for the schedule to change. So I grabbed the keys and went to unlock the side door. The truck was one of those unmarked white box trucks, the kind you see everywhere and never think twice about. The driver was already getting out when I opened the door. He was a heavyset guy, maybe in his 40s, wearing a stained uniform that didn't have any company logo on it. He asked if I was ready to receive the delivery. I told him I wasn't aware we had one scheduled, but if he had paperwork, I'd sign for it. He handed me a clipboard with a delivery form. Everything looked normal. It listed a bunch of standard inventory items: chips, candy, drinks. I signed it and handed it back. He went to the back of the truck and opened the door. That's when I noticed something weird. The inside of the truck was completely dark, like pitch black. Most delivery trucks have some kind of interior lighting, but this one didn't. He climbed inside and started pulling out boxes. I helped him stack them on the dolly and we wheeled them into the storage room. This went on for maybe 15 minutes. He'd bring boxes, I'd help stack them, and we'd take them inside. The whole time he didn't say a word. No small talk, no complaints about the late hour, nothing. Just silence. After the last box was inside, he handed me another form to sign, confirming the delivery was complete. I signed it and he left without saying goodbye. I locked the side door and went back to the counter. Something about the whole interaction felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was. Around 3 a.m., I decided to start unpacking the boxes in the storage room. I grabbed a cutter and opened the first one. Inside were bags of chips, just like the form had said. I opened a few more boxes. More chips, some candy bars, bottles of soda. Everything seemed normal. Then I got to a box that was heavier than the others. I cut it open and looked inside. At first, I couldn't process what I was seeing. It was full of Polaroid photographs, hundreds of them, just loose in the box. I picked one up. It showed the inside of a house, someone's living room, empty and dimly lit. I picked up another, a bedroom with an unmade bed. Another showed a kitchen, then a bathroom. I kept looking through them, my hands starting to shake. Every single photo was of the interior of someone's home. Different houses, different rooms, all taken from angles that suggested the photographer had been standing just inside the doorway. Then I found one that made my blood run cold. It was a photo of a woman sleeping in bed. The angle was from the foot of the bed, looking down at her. She had no idea someone was in the room with her. I dropped the photo and stepped back from the box. My mind was racing. Why the hell was this in a delivery to a gas station? Was this some kind of mistake? Had the driver grabbed the wrong box? I pulled out my phone and called my manager. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Still nothing. I went back to the box and kept looking through the photos, hoping to find something that would explain this. That's when I found a photo that made me feel sick. It was a picture of the gas station, taken from outside, through the front window. And in the photo, I could see myself behind the counter, looking down at my phone. The photo had been taken tonight, within the last hour. I dropped the entire box and ran to the front of the store. I looked out the window, scanning the parking lot. There was nobody there, just empty pavement under the fluorescent lights. I locked the front door and grabbed my phone again. This time I called 911. I told the dispatcher that I had received a suspicious delivery and that I needed someone to check it out. She said an officer would be there shortly and to stay inside with the doors locked. I did exactly that. I stood behind the counter, watching the security monitors, waiting. The officer arrived about 20 minutes later. He let me in and showed him the box of photos. He looked through them, his expression getting more serious with each one. He asked me about the delivery driver. I described him as best I could and showed the officer the delivery form I signed. The officer radioed it in, requesting someone check the trucking company listed on the form. A few minutes later, he got a response. There was no trucking company by that name. The form was fake. The officer told me to leave the box untouched and that detectives would need to come collect it as evidence. He stayed with me for the rest of my shift, which I appreciated because there was no way I could have stayed there alone. The next day, detectives came and took the entire box. They also took the security footage from that night. I gave them my statement, and they told me they'd be in touch. It's been a month, and I haven't heard anything. The police haven't called, and my manager acts like the whole thing never happened. He told me to stop talking about it because it was bad for business. I still work there. I still work the same shift, but every time I hear a truck pull up outside, my heart starts racing. And I can't stop thinking about those photos, especially the one of me behind the counter, because whoever took it knows where I work, and they know I'm here alone. You ever notice how gas stations always have that one pump that's broken? It's never fully out of order, just malfunctioning enough that people avoid it. The card reader doesn't work, or the receipt printer is jammed, or the nozzle drips after you're done pumping. At the marathon station where I worked, that pump was number 9. It wasn't broken exactly. It worked fine during the day. But at night, something about it was wrong. Customers would pull up to it, try to use it, and then drive around to a different pump without saying why. I'd watch it happen on the security cameras. They'd sit there for a minute, looking confused or uncomfortable, and then they'd move. I asked my manager about it once. He said Pump 9 had always been weird, that they'd had technicians look at it multiple times and couldn't find anything wrong with it. Eventually, he just stopped caring. I started working there about 7 months ago, during my gap year before hopefully going to community college. The overnight shift paid a little more than day shifts, and I needed the money, so I took it. 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 5 nights a week, all alone. For the first few months, I didn't pay much attention to Pump 9. It was just the weird pump people avoided. But then I started noticing a pattern. Every night, around 3:30 a.m., someone would pull up to Pump 9. Same time, same pump, different cars, different people, but always 3:30. The first few times I thought it was coincidence, but after a week of this happening every single night I worked, I started paying closer attention. I'd watch on the monitor as a car would pull up to Pump 9. The driver would get out, walk up to the pump, and just stand there. They wouldn't insert their card, they wouldn't lift the nozzle. They'd just stand there facing the pump, completely still. After maybe a minute, they'd get back in their car and leave. It was the same every time. Different people, same behavior. I mentioned it to one of the day shift workers, and she laughed and said I was seeing things. She said nobody comes to the station at 3:30 a.m. on a regular basis, that I was probably just tired and mixing up different nights, but I knew what I was seeing. One night, about 3 weeks ago, I decided to go outside when it happened. I wanted to see what was going on up close, maybe ask the person what they were doing. At 3:28 a.m., I positioned myself near the front door, watching through the glass. Sure enough, at exactly 3:30, a sedan pulled up to Pump 9. The driver got out. It was a woman, maybe in her 30s, wearing jeans and a jacket. She walked up to the pump and stood there, facing it, just like all the others had. I opened the door and called out to her, asking if she needed help. She didn't respond, didn't even turn around. She just stood there, staring at the pump. I walked closer, calling out again. Still nothing. I was maybe 10 feet away from her when she finally moved. She reached out and touched the pump screen. The moment her hand made contact, the screen lit up, not with the usual "please pay inside" message. It displayed a string of numbers. No words, just numbers scrolling across the screen too fast to read. I stopped walking. Something about this felt very, very wrong. The woman pulled her hand back, got in her car, and left. She never looked at me, never acknowledged I was there. I walked up to the pump and looked at the screen. It was back to normal. "Please pay inside" in bright green letters. I went back inside and pulled up the security footage from the last few minutes. I watched myself walk outside, approach the woman, and stand there. On the footage, I could see myself talking, gesturing toward her, but the woman wasn't there. The camera showed an empty parking space at Pump 9. I was standing there alone, talking to nobody. I rewound the footage and watched it again. No car, no woman. Just me standing in an empty parking lot at 3:30 in the morning. It felt like I was losing my mind. I'd seen her with my own eyes. I'd watched her touch the pump, but the cameras showed nothing. The next night, I stayed inside. I watched the monitor, waiting for 3:30. When the time came, a pickup truck pulled up to Pump 9. The driver got out and did the same thing. Walked to the pump, stood there, touched the screen, then left. But this time, I also watched the view from a different camera, one that covered the same area from a different angle. On that camera, Pump 9 was empty. No truck, no driver, nothing. Whichever camera was pointed directly at Pump 9 showed people. Every other angle showed an empty pump. I called my manager the next morning and told him something was wrong with the cameras. He said he'd have someone look at it, but nobody ever came. I started dreading 3:30 a.m. Every night, I'd watch the monitor as someone pulled up to Pump 9. got out, touched the screen, then left. And every night, the alternate camera angles showed nothing. Last week, something different happened. At 3:30, a car pulled up to pump 9 like usual, but this time, after the driver touched the screen, they didn't leave. They turned around and looked directly at the camera, directly at me. Then they started walking towards the store. I locked the door immediately. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the deadbolt. The man walked up to the door and stood there, facing me through the glass. He was a man, middle-aged, completely expressionless. He raised his hand and knocked 3 times. Slow, deliberate knocks. I didn't move. I just stood there, staring at him. He knocked again. Then he pulled out his phone and held it up to the glass. On the screen was a text message. It said, "You're not supposed to be watching." I stepped back from the door. He lowered his phone, turned around, and walked back to his car. Then he drove away. I checked the other camera angles. They showed an empty parking lot. No car, no man. Just me standing inside the store, staring at a locked door. I quit 2 days ago. I didn't give notice, didn't explain why. I just stopped showing up. My manager called and left a voicemail asking what happened. I didn't call back.